maintaining the same standard.
Yeah, that's a criticism of me.
I was going to see me for a minute.
I'll change my It is now, yeah. Yeah. You get kicked onto the table and carry on.
And you? How are you doing?
You know what?
Are you well? Yeah, that's good.
Good evening. Yeah. Step forward from many.
Make sure that
Right, I'm going to start. Yes. I know he did. Yes. Yes. He is coming. Yes, it affected somebody else as well. Right, well, it is just after 1:15, and although the agenda is not all that long, there are several quite weighty items on it which might take us some time. So I'll start the meeting now with the public participant. First of all, do we have any apologies for absence? Right. And so I'll now move into the public participation time. I'm aware that some of you are here to speak about the permission for 40 dwellings in Mill Lane, so it probably would be more appropriate if I take you when we get to that item rather than now. So if anyone has any other item of public business.
After the last full council meeting, I was wondering, are you going to be publishing your illegal encampment?
Well, what, sorry?
The illegal encampment policy, will you be publishing it?
Oh yes, it's on the website now.
Oh, I looked, I didn't see it.
Well,
I
it should be.
apologise.
It's under policy.
Yes, yes.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yes, it's a public document, so yes, good. Okay, is there anybody else? Right, in that case, we've just got one or two very short short items of business before we get to the before we get to the planning application. So we'll move on to agenda item 173. Does anyone have any interest they wish to declare to this meeting? No. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I represent things on the district council, and that goes to one planning application.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's the economics. Yeah, hang on a second. No, they're Agritech. Yes, that's right. Yes, yes, okay, we go. Largely.
On the accounts that we're going to transfer, I have no interest in them at all.
Okay.
Whatever the case is, without any income to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Okay. Yes, at the beginning of the meeting, I should have hope everyone had a good Christmas and wish you all a happy New Year. Right, so agenda item 174, which is to confirm and sign the minutes of the full parish council, which was held on the 12th of December. So you should all have copies in front of you. I'll go through them item by item as usual. So starting on the first page, item 144.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's got apologies and it's work as well. So it's a another parish council meeting.
Okay.
Work
Well, we modify those, yes, okay. Anyone else? 145?
Didn't we say that you have to give a reason?
Yes.
You don't have a reason to cancel no.
Because I didn't have a reason. Oh no, it was, yeah, because it was pulled, yeah, okay.
Yes, so yes, there should be right, actually.
Can I just say,
yeah.
I think we had a discussion about this in connection with data protection. I'm not suggesting we deal with it now, but I think when we're discussing data protection, we need to think about whether reasons should be there, particularly if there's sickness, absence, or things that might affect security. So
yes, okay.
just to
Yeah. Well, yes, I mean, I think you can say illness without going into medical details.
I think it was it should say
So anyway.
But we need to discuss that.
Yes, yes, okay, yes, if we discuss that, yeah. So 145, 146, 147, 148 over the page, 149, 150, 151, 152, 153 over the page, 154, 155 over the page, 156, 157, 158, 159, 160, 161, 162, 163, 164, 165, 166, 167.
Sorry, there's a slight typo on 164, it says discuss rather than discuss.
So,
There's a typo on 174.
yeah,
Sorry, 164.
Yeah, yeah.
164.
Just on-
Yeah, okay, yes, yeah, great.
Thank you.
Okay. 166, 167, 168 over the page, and 169. Is everyone happy that with those two small amendments, that I accept those minutes as an accurate record of that meeting? So, proposed by Janet, I was seconded these. Right, no, all those in agreement, please indicate. I take it since nobody raised them as I was going through, there are no matters arising that aren't covered by the current chamber. Right, so that brings us into the planning applications and associated matters. And the first one is an outline application. The number should end in the initials OL rather than FL, which is an outline application. The residential development of up to 40 dwellings, with some matters reserved except for access, appearance, layout and scale. Land at Mill Lane, Sawston, and it's the second time that an application has been on this site has come before us. So I think everyone has seen the plans. So I think there are members of the public who wish to speak on this. So if you'd like to, in any particular order, please feel free.
And I'd like to make a few points about this application, and with your permission, show you a few pictures as well. That
The ones that are
yes.
Is this the one?
Yes.
Yes.
They're in the form of a PowerPoint, aren't they? So
Yes.
that's-
Yeah,
I won't say
that's
this, yes,
it.
I've
It has
seen
been sent to...
Yes, we have seen those actually.
Not quite yet.
But it might be helpful if you can get them up. Right.
Now they are.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I'll go through all this as quickly as I
Yes,
can.
okay.
So, just 3 points of recent history on the site, first of all. It was put forward for the local plan in 2013. This was opposed by the parish council, and then it was rejected from the local plan by South Cambs for a number of reasons, including, however, that it does not avoid land at risk of flooding while other sites are available, and also because it would have an adverse impact on Sawston's landscape. So, not in the first local plan. Then, as Councillor Bard has just said, an application was put forward, 46 houses in 2016, which is again opposed here, and then refused for a wide range of reasons. And I read recently in the Sawston Scene that during the inspector's examination of the local plan, it was put forward again as should be included in the local plan. Well, I don't know if you know that just a few days ago, the proposed modifications to the local plan have been published, and I see it's not indeed included in that. So there's those 3 goals. Now, the new application that we're looking at tonight, it has dealt with some of the reasons for the previous refusal, but it seems to me there are still 3, it's just my opinion, very clear reasons why it should not go ahead. And the first of these, which is what I want to show you the pictures, but could we go back, please, is flood risk. Now, the developers have put in a flood risk assessment with their application, but I believe that in a number of places it is inconsistent with evidence that exists elsewhere, and therefore its conclusions need to be called into question. Now, first of all, the one that we have most evidence on is they claim that the site did not flood in 2001, and they include as part of their evidence this. They claim that it merely ponded, and they include an aerial photograph showing ponding. But the point to realise with this is that this photograph is not dated, could have been taken at any time. As the flood actually took place at night, it certainly couldn't have been taken then. And we have plenty of photos that show different evidence. That's
the photographs that you referred to, which is ponding apparently.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Well, that's the site there,
Yes.
which is fairly heavily
well,
ponded, shall we say. Even so,
wait
yes.
until you see my picture.
Okay, yes.
So if we can go back to my first slide.
Yes.
Now, can you press Shift F5?
So, it's come.
Right, okay, and go on to the next one.
Yeah, do there and say.
Okay. Now, the other thing they claim in their risk assessment is that the flood of this field. No, can you go back, please?
Yes. This one?
Yes, that one.
Yeah, yeah.
They claim that this flood did not come from the river, but was merely rainfall sitting on the field. Now, the reason I put this in is this come.
This one? Oh, sorry.
No, I still want to speak about this one. Thank you. This is online, and it comes from South Camden City's Strategic Flood Risk Assessment. It's part of a very long table of all recent floods. And if you look at the bottom line there, 23rd of October, it's actually the 22nd, but Sawston, Mill Lane, source of flooding, River Cam, data source, SCDC. So that initially is different to what the developers are saying, that it was merely rain sitting in puddles. Okay, so thank you. Now let's go on to the other pictures. I'll go through these fairly quickly. Now, my wife, who is a photographer, had the interest to get out and take some photos when it flooded. I should say that we live just in front of the field, and we were flooded too, as part of it, as you'll see. Now, you need to be aware that we were not taking these photos because we thought that 17 years later we would need to be showing evidence. We simply took some photos. Also, the flood started at 5 o'clock in the evening in October and went on through the night. You can't take photos in the night. These were taken the next day and the day after that when the flood had begun to go down. Anyway, now let me explain what the photos are. This one you might see if you know that end of the village. This is a view from the bypass of the field next to the bypass, and you can see the stakings at the back. This was the field that flooded first. So the water came under the road from the River Cam and completely flooded that field. This was the next day.
And it's true to say that that field floods quite frequently.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I've seen that several times.
Yes.
In
But this flood was worse than any other since then. And you can see the field is completely full of water. Okay, can we go on to the next
Yes,
one?
yes. Sorry, we just leave those. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the next picture. Thank you. So this is another view of the same field in a slightly different direction, and in fact you can see the field below it further south, and it was completely full of water. Okay, next one please. Now this is the field that is being applied for. If you come down to our house you would recognise the field. It's still got the electricity pylon at the back there. It's perfectly recognisable, and that is not ponding. That is a field completely full of water, and it is the next day after the rain has stopped. Okay, on to the next one, please. This is another view of the same one. The water's gone down a little bit. Let me just describe to you what happened. It had been raining all day, unusually. About 5 o'clock, the water came from the other side of the road. The fields over that side are completely filled up. The ditches are completely filled up. There are ways that can come under the road with, I don't know the technology of it, but there's doors there and the water can be let through. The end field flooded first, then all the ditches. The field that's being applied for had drainage ditches all the way around, completely filled up. That field completely filled up. Then it came into the gardens. So our garden, we live at 91. 89 was completely filled up. 87 was completely filled up. We were, everybody was putting their valuables upstairs. In the end, the water, if this is our patio, the water was up to there. We didn't come indoors, but the gardens were, well flooded, and our patio is a good couple of feet above the garden.
Well, and the Environment Agency came out with sandbags.
The Environment Agency, we were all given sandbags. The water then came out of the field in question, where the entrance is, flooded the road, and the road was closed that night and continued to be closed all the next day, as I'll show you in a minute. Okay, let's go on through the pictures. Now this is a view from our back. Again, it's clearly the next day, but the garden you can see is the garden of 89. The field is the field behind it, and you can see how the water has come from that field into the gardens. I do need to emphasise it was fuller than that. It had gone down by then. Okay, on to the next one. So this is me, looking a little bit younger than I do now, clearing up. You can see the sandbags there. After, you can see that our garden, the patio, after the water was going down again, you would not have seen the grass at all during the flood. Okay, on to the next. Now this is Mill Lane the next day, with the water out in the road. It was worse than that, and the road was closed. Okay, on to the next one. And here you are, this is just a cutting from the paper, 23rd of October. And if you look at the second paragraph, in other areas, Mill Lane and Sawston, etc., are also closed. So just picking that up. Okay. Now, another thing in the flood risk assessment is they claim that this site did not flood in 1947. They accept that it flooded in 1968. Now, I wasn't there in 1947 or anywhere, but this is the well-known historic flood map, and you have to look at it fairly carefully and read the writing to see what each flood is labelled. But you can, and I've drawn the site. You see the red dot, and then just to the left of it, you can see the site drawn onto the map. Now, the very large extended flood is the 1968 one, which went all the way up Mill Lane. The one, I think, that goes right down the middle of it is their record of the 1947 one, which did flood it.
Yeah.
Pardon?
From 47, that come right up there.
There are archival photographs that show flooding on Mill Lane Recreation Ground.
I sent them to you.
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's right. Yes.
I have collected photos
that you
that
said.
show the view from
Yes,
town
yes,
close,
yes,
showing the whole of Mill Lane flooded in 1947.
yes.
And it's quite clear that it did flood in, well, in fact, it's flooded in the last 100 years 4 times at least, and I've sent you more evidence that I'm not going to bother to show you tonight. 1918, when houses fell down.
Yes.
1947, and there are photos, there are newspaper reports. 1968, and 2001,
I think there was one in the 1920s as well. That's
and probably the 1950s.
Yeah.
I'll just say thank you to the council, because the evidence that you've submitted to us that we can pass on to
Yes,
South Cambs
Yes.
will be really valuable in rebutting
yes.
the risk assessment
yes.
document that they've put together. They've
Yes.
clearly spent, hundreds and thousands of pounds on, and quite frankly, it beggars belief when contradicted with the evidence that you've provided.
Well, you have submitted this material to South Cambs, haven't you?
Well, I have previously,
Right, okay.
and I shall tomorrow, but I
Yes.
thought I'd wait and see
Well,
what
I can
the
make
reaction
sure.
was here. So can we show the next one?
Sure.
Now, this is also an interesting map because this is an official map. The South Cambs adopted proposals from 2010, but if you look at the key on the right-hand side, it comes from the Environment Agency from December 2009. You could probably work out which is the field being applied for.
Yes,
Not the one on the left, but the next one to it. That,
yes,
you're just about to put, that's the one, yes.
It's here, yes.
And
Yeah.
the cross-hatching on there, this is 2009, but from 2009 puts that in flood zone 3, which is high risk. Now I know that they've changed their views on flood risk since then, so I've got one more map to show you and then I'll shut up. Now this was from last week. This is what you get online
Yes,
if you look at it
yeah.
tonight.
Yeah.
And where the sort of sights of the gun are in the middle is the site. And I know it's a light blue, it's actually the second blue up, not the lowest blue.
Yeah.
But if you're online and you click on that, it tells you that the flood risk is between 1 in 100 years and 1 in 1,000 years. Well, it has actually flooded 4 times in 100 years, but even if you believe this, that is still the definition of flood zone 2.
Yeah.
So even now, that is defined as flood zone 2. So that's my evidence on flood. The only 2 other points I would make about this application very quickly. One is there is another development that has been approved, as you know, outline in Mill Lane. There's a lot of trouble with detail, I think, and nothing's happened there yet. But it would seem to me rather not good planning sense to do another one in Mill Lane before that one is kind of well underway and we can see the impact of it. And lastly, we have in the local plan, as you know, 540 houses already approved in Sawston, which will have a big impact on all of the infrastructure. So another 88 houses down Mill Lane really is too many. So thank you very much for your
Thank you very
time.
much. Does anyone else want to add anything to that? I'm talking about public first of all, then other members.
Yes.
Right, okay. First turn in Ryan.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to make a point. It doesn't matter what has been submitted in respect of other planning applications that might have been on this site or adjacent sites. All the evidence needs to be resubmitted specifically in relation to this site as well.
Thank you. Yes. Brian.
I was just going to add that the clear evidence from climate change is that it increases the risk of severe weather events, and so the chances of bigger deluges than we've had in the past are increased rather than reduced. So the fact that the assessment is going down rather flies in the face of that evidence too.
Yes.
So I think if we could add that to
Well,
our
yes, I mean, you
statements.
can access the regional climate projections online, actually, through the, so, yeah. Right, so, gentlemen, here, sorry.
Yeah, my name's David Mead, I'm the agent.
Right.
So I've got come on and say
Yeah,
hello. I understand that concerns have been raised because obviously they were raised in detail in the previous plan application. We have been discussing this site with the Environment Agency in terms of the flooding, the flood risk assessment that's based on the consultations we have had with them throughout 2017 and earlier before the previous application was submitted. And we you're absolutely right. It's the modelling and the data that's available from the environment agency doesn't seem to change weekly, depending on who you speak to on the day and whether the modelling has been updated, which they now do every 3 months. So that's why the maps can change so much. And we're not using the historic data anymore from 47, 68 and the ones previous to that. It's now all done with modelling, so that's the flood risk assessment is effectively based on that. But I know that you're going to form your own view. I would just like to say that we have spent a lot of time with South Cambs with regard to coming up with a proposal that they would be happier with. We've updated the transport assessment as well based on some of the comments that were made last time by the County Council Highways. The flood risk assessment itself has been updated in the context of comments made by the EA and the County Councillors, Local League Flood Authority. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you may have any, but I thought I would come along just to introduce myself and answer anything if there was. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the...
Yes, if we're at such a... Oh, sorry.
No, wait for a quick question.
Okay. So the evidence that you've seen tonight is that we don't agree with your flood assessment.
Yes.
Your flood risk assessment. The water table there is frequently only a small amount of centimetres below the surface, as was presented in a previous application that we heard last month. Yes. Yeah. For another proposal on Mill Lane, and there are 3 proposals in this area that will all rely on a single ditch that is badly maintained at the moment and clearly doesn't have the capacity for more runoff water than it currently gets from water soaking into the field. So my question is, in simple terms and briefly, what are you proposing to stop the water getting into the houses that you're building and those that are adjacent to it?
So, yeah, I'm a planner, not a drainage engineer, but my understanding is that obviously there's 2 issues here. One relates to the potential of fluvial flooding with regard to the water entering the site, overflowing of the river and the problems coming from elsewhere, which is what's dealt with being the flood risk assessment and referred to the modelling that I was just talking about. The second issue, which we have to deal with on all sites of more than half a hectare, is with regard to drainage, and that's therefore the increase in runoff that's created by the development being proposed, and the base for that is that it must not be any more than as if the houses or whatever development you're proposing wasn't there. In other words, it needs to be greenfield runoff. So the drainage strategy has been submitted alongside the flood risk assessment that looks at the ways to drain the site. We're aware that the water table, obviously it's a bit of a movable feast, but is relatively high, and so ways can work on some occasions but may not work on all occasions. Therefore, the idea is to make sure that we can balance all of the stormwater runoff, both from the roads, hard standing, and the buildings themselves, in other words, the roof and the gutters, etc., on site, to ensure that that's stored on site and then released at a rate that is the same as greenfield runoff. So, in other words, it's stored. One of the common ways of doing it, and it's been suggested that the soakaways become less effective because of the in times of very heavy rain, is that the water stored underneath the road in balancing tanks and then released at the same rate as greenfield runoff. After that, once the main problem with heavy rain has died down, in other words, it gets released.
In balancing tanks under the surface.
Yeah, so that's another option is to do balancing above ground. There's a difference of opinion about which one's the best. Balancing underground, although it's more expensive, it takes up less land because it's under the road effectively. But it does allow for, but it's safe and secure. Whereas balancing above ground, apart from taking up more land, there's issues with maintenance, people getting access to it, things being dumped in and stuff. So it's one of those things that you have to try and weigh up. And I know county councillors as now the flood, as the drainage authority effectively instead of the EA now. They do prefer above ground balancing, so it's something that we need to perhaps look at. But the general preference I think is, although it's cost a bit more money to maintain, but that's the responsibility of the development of the county council, is to do it underground. It's safe and done.
But presumably underground balancing wouldn't work if the tanks are in fact below the water table.
The tanks are completely sealed. They're bundled effectively, so they can go within the water table. There's no penetration into the tanks or out of the tanks. There's a valve that the water comes in from the surface water, either from the roads and the roofs, goes into the tanks. It's then held in the tanks. There's no other way of water getting in, so it doesn't matter what height the water table is around it. And then when the water table drops gradually, as the event itself recedes, then the water is released from the tanks after the main problem has already occurred.
But I think local local knowledge would suggest that the water table, except during very dry periods in the summer, the water table is permanently high in that area. I think I accept your comments about modelling, but as we're all aware, climate modelling has notoriously high levels of uncertainty, and I wonder whether you can supply us with the numerical uncertainties on the figures you've used.
I can't tonight.
Okay.
Sorry.
Janet.
Thank you. Can I ask a couple of questions which aren't to do with flooding and drainage, but I think got raised in the comments? One was about the design of the houses. Can you tell us something about what they'll look like? The other was about the ratio of social housing, and whether you've got partner yet.
I'll do the social housing first. 40%.
Yeah, but have you got a partner, or how are you going to deliver?
We've been speaking to Lumus with regard to partnership on the development of this. Yes, they're based in St Ives. Well, their office that I'm dealing with is based in St Ives, but obviously their main office is in St. And with regard to the design, we've been using PIP architecture in Cambridge. With regard to producing these plans, they've come up with quite a modern twist in with regard to the design of the buildings, but trying to keep to a scale and proportions that relates to the vernacular. In other words, the gables aren't too wide, 45-degree pitches, that sort of thing. So.
What colour will the roofs be?
Sorry?
What will the roofs look like? Some they're not flat. Well, they're obviously not flat, but are they?
In the design statement, Brian, there's some.
There's some coloured images in the design access statement and a couple of perspectives, and there's some street scenes. But they're pitched roofs.
One of the documents is the design access.
So is that an access statement? Got it there. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Were you matching?
No, with regard to the proportions rather than the design. Sorry.
Oh, right, it has been pointed out, I think, by several residents that they know and
it's modern style. We're trying to keep the proportions, so the gables are, 4.5, 5 metres rather than some of these modern 7, 8 metres sort of stuff, that sort of thing. Eaves at 4.5, 5 metres, total height 8 metres.
I think some of the comments from the neighbours was.
Sorry, I just got one other question, which is more to David and Tony, because the other point I think that was raised in the comments was about kind of ad hocery of planning, and the two developments taken together will be 88
yes.
houses. Does that get taken off the 540?
No, it's in addition to.
I raised that just as
okay.
a point on an impact assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just comments from the neighbours, particularly about the design style of the houses, which seems to be completely housekeeping. You suggested that they were in the local vernacular.
No, I just answered that. Sorry, but what I was saying is, what I specifically said was we're looking at a modern style, modern design of houses, but proportions that relate to the local vernacular.
Thank you.
But they are standard house designs. They aren't a bespoke design to this particular site, are they?
I'm sure there's something similar has been used elsewhere. Yeah, I've yet to find out. Does it all from scratch?
Just on your housing and your development, just what facilities will you be putting there for people with disabilities?
Well, I'm trying to think of the proportion that we need to do for lifetime homes, but it's the percentage is quite low that you need to meet the target volume, it's only 5%. But every single house that's built has to meet current building regs, which means that all the ground floor accommodation, apart from flats, which we're going to go through on here, needs to be fully disabled access, including level entry, disabled WCs on the ground floor, wider doors, sockets at the right height, switches at the right height. So it's, we're not proposing anything more than what you have to do with regard to building regs.
What about parking?
Parking is all the parking for the houses is curtilage parking, 2 to 3 car parking spaces per unit.
Tony.
So making these units of accommodation disabled access availability, that makes them more liable to flooding rather than less, because it means that all the ground floor is as a level with no raised design features such as the houses in Winmares where you have a steps and access up steps.
That's the kind of problem you pay architects to solve, isn't it?
Well,
It's not a reason for not.
Well, it's in the case of Limeade.
Here's a situation where we feel that this site might be liable to flooding, and therefore the houses would be more liable to be flooded if they are at this level.
And also there are concerns about evacuations, really, we have to say.
The floor
And I
levels.
think, in the case of Limeade, that was a condition that was imposed, but there was imposed through by the Environment Agency to have those raised. Sorry.
So obviously the ground floor level of the houses doesn't sit on the ground.
No.
It will be between 250, 300 mil higher than existing ground levels, and generally, so whatever happens, it's even with the surface flooding, the evidence that we've seen, it doesn't get anywhere near a foot deep, so and that's in the conjunction with the Environment Agency stipulation of minimum floor levels, but at the very least they're going to be 250, 300 above ground level. That's how you build a house.
But that wasn't shown in the diagram you had just in front of us a few seconds ago.
You're not going to see 250 mil to scale on a diagram on a street elevation that we were looking at earlier. But to ensure level access, although the house is this far above the ground, the level access has to be taken up. The ramp can't be any more than 1 in 12 to make sure it's disabled access, and that's generally how you do it.
Yes. Do any members of the public have any questions for the agent?
I've wondered about the ditches. Are the ditches not going to be any part of the flood? Because at the moment you've got all the gardens backing onto the ditches, so they will never be cleared, and so therefore how's the water going to get away? They're not cleared now, they haven't been since we've been there.
As I understand it at the moment, with regard to what's proposed in the drainage strategy, is that with the soakaways and the balancing, then it's to create greenfield runoff. Effectively, you've got to recreate as if the rain is actually literally falling onto the grass as it stands at the moment. So actually, it's soakaways whilst in light rain, and in heavy rain it's balanced and then continues into the soakaways, and not relying specifically on drainage to ditches, which wouldn't be allowed now because that would increase surface water runoff, which you're not allowed to do because that would then put pressure on the river and cause flooding.
I mean, the ditches are half full at the moment, so therefore the water level must be...
I can try and find out, and if I can get some information from our drainage people, I can forward it to the
Yes. Yes, because the drain which runs along the east side of the site, I think it is, it's an awarded drain. South Cam's awarded drain, but there's some dispute as to how far up the award goes. We had a discussion about this at our last meeting, and the historic maps disagree with one another, and it really take about research to find out exactly what the situation, what the legal requirement is there. Right, if there are no further questions or comments, Emma, do I have a proposal for?
Yes,
we've got a discussion.
I propose that we object to the plan and the various material considerations that we discussed, particularly the flood.
Do I have any second? Right. All over the place. I think Beck was just first. Okay. So we have a proposed seconder that we object to this application on grounds of flood risk, and so all those in favour of that proposal, please indicate.
There's obviously no any other objections. I thought home development had also been mentioned.
Well, there were seven reasons given actually, and one of them was effect on the green belt landscape effect. I'm trying to remember what the other ones were. Actually, it's quite a long list.
Given last time, you mean?
But on the yes, but on the other hand, it's probably better to focus on one or two substantive objections and to have a sort of scattergun approach.
Yes, I certainly don't think we have to enumerate every single
No,
thing, but
no.
I think it would be good to have something
Yes.
else to look back.
Well, would you like to suggest something?
I thought that overdevelopment was also a strong argument in this area.
The density actually on the site is not all that high.
Yes,
That's
well,
right. Yes, yeah.
It's a complete sort of lack of
Yeah.
sympathy with
Over
all
the
the
years, I
surrounding
mean,
architecture.
I mean, I can see where you're coming from, but the cumulative effect argument has been used in other contexts and not been supported at appeal.
So the traffic would fall into the same consideration, probably.
Yes, I mean, unless you had an objection from highways, yes, yeah. I think the flooding issue is a strong one. Certainly, to my mind, the main reason that we object to development on this site. And also, of course, this is outside the village envelope, which once the local plan is adopted or is on point, or the inspector has submitted her report, will then become a material planning issue again.
Right, so request an independent report on the flood risk, or
We can do, yes,
anything
yeah.
of that sort, because I think it's also about understanding, you know,
Yes, yes,
that
Yeah, well, yes.
both the risk and the
Yes.
mitigation.
Yes. What I'm going to do is take a vote on that proposal
Okay.
and then make those suggestions, because there are one or two other things we need to discuss as well. So all those in
We've got
favour?
those in favour
So,
already.
yes. Is anyone against?
No.
Abstention.
Abstaining too,
And
yeah.
myself and Kevin are not voting because we are on the planning committee. So there is potential issue of redetermination, so that's the reason I'm voting. Yes.
Is it time for me to ask you if we think it's appropriate to add those documents that have been presented to us in corroboration of our objection?
I mean, if you're submitting those directly to South Cams, there's no reason that both of us to do it. Provided South Cams has them, yes, yeah.
I thought Tony suggested we should attach them.
Yeah.
As the
We can do, yes.
We ought to refer specifically to those documents.
Yes, no,
If
I mean, that's
John would be
yeah,
kind of to
yes.
actually allow the parish council to as part of. I mean, the photographs speak for
We've done
themselves.
that.
They do, yes, they do.
Much more than many words from us would know.
I think all that historical stuff in the papers as well that has been provided
I'm very happy for you
speaks
to.
volumes.
Yes.
I mean, we will put it in, but you put it in as well. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, okay, yes, you can do that, yeah, okay. Right, so, you wanted to raise the point about asking for a...
Yes, I mean, is that something we could reasonably request? I mean, I don't know what South Cam's view will be on it, but is it something we should say that if South Cams was minded to approve, then we would request an independent report first?
Drainage report.
Drainage
Do that
report.
first, so we wouldn't be
Yes,
What's that be?
yes.
What
Well,
order
yes,
would that be?
yes, only if officers are minded to approve.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
So that I was going to
I
ask.
recommend approval.
That's it. So the likelihood that this will go to planning committee,
Oh, yes, yes.
and so
Well, I mean,
sorry.
if it comes forward as a recommendation of refusal under delegated powers, then I doubt whether it would go to the planning committee.
Right. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
But if it was to be considered,
Yes.
it would go to planning committee,
Yes, yeah.
and therefore the planning committee would have exactly the same evidence that we've had today, plus more.
Yes, yeah.
And we've got two representatives on the planning committee here.
And also a resident objector is allowed to speak as well. So, if the recommendation is for approval, so if
So
you
it
wish
will
to
well
register that,
worth.
you will be able to show your PowerPoint to the planning committee.
Is it worth also sending a delegate from the parish?
Yes,
Because we didn't vote.
when we know it's on the planning agenda, yes, yeah.
Oh, so if we could take those opportunities to speak
Yeah.
when it comes up, as we
raise
did
the
do
issue
previously.
Report then.
But I'm happy to. I'm happy to sort of cover that position in case. I mean, it's certainly not on this month. It's unlikely to be on next month. But if we want to nominate a member of this council to represent the parish, I think it'd be.
I could also represent district as well.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, you can speak as a local member. So yes, yeah. So okay. Is everyone happy to? I mean, Janet's been proposed, so I need to have a formal vote on that. So
seconder for Janet.
yes, no, Janet seconded, so all those in favour of Janet representing us. Okay. Can we make that a sort of general permission? Because there are occasions when planning applications come up between meetings, and it might be more convenient if we had a motion to appoint Janet.
A step too far without considering it as a separate item.
Yeah, okay. Because I think perhaps on the next agenda that might be a useful thing to do, actually.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you.
Right. Now, there's one other item arising from this, and that is we've been asked by the S106 officer that if this were to be approved, and what I'm going to say now in no way prejudices this application either way, what we require in terms of S106 contributions. The reason, as I say, the reason I'm raising this is because there have been instances of other parishes who have objected to planning applications and not put in the S106 requirement. If those applications are approved, they then lose out. You can't introduce it later on in the process at an appeal level. So, without any prejudice, I would suggest that we do that. Now, you recall that in the case of the other development in Mill Lane, we asked for and obtained a contribution of £140,000 towards the rebuilding of Mill Lane Pavilion, which is really past its sell-by date, and also could be enlarged to provide extra community space. So one thing the Parish Council might wish to consider is whether we would ask for contributions from this development to be put into that pool.
I think that's eminently sensible.
Yes, could I have a proposer and a seconder? So proposed by Kieran, seconded by Neil. So all those in favour of that, making that request. Thank you. Okay.
If you let me know how much, I might be able to get that signed off sooner rather than later.
There is a tariff which we will okay. Right, thank you very much. So the next item, I'm going to move forward the S4099 to consider next, because the team over here have been patiently waiting. So before we go through the household ones, I'll take that one next. So we're looking at S4099 /17/OL. Everyone's had an opportunity to look at this application, and you also received an executive summary of the planning statement, and also had an opportunity to look at documents online. So, someone would like to...
while to get through them.
All 250 of them, I think it is now. Joe.
I was going to say, we also had the
We did,
FAQs.
yes.
If people remember,
Yeah.
I wrote round in December for any questions, and I put the ones that we thought were most appropriate to Faye. I'm afraid I only did it on Monday because of New Year and children around and whatever, and you very nobly have responded. I have sent them to everyone. I don't know whether you got a chance to have a quick look, but it might be that this might be.
Yes. I mean, I'd like to thank you actually for responding so rapidly to that.
It was very helpful.
Sorry, we did put you on the spot a bit, I'm afraid.
I apologise for spelling errors.
So are there, I mean, I think there are issues which I personally would like to expand on arising from this question, or these questions, and one of the one is question 2, and one of the things that concerns me is that tomorrow South Council will be considering an application for the Sawston Trading Park in Ambersford, who also made various proposals for connections to the junction, which are not, which are different. There are also proposals coming forward from the South Cambs Junction study associated with the Great Chesterford village proposal, which again are different. And one of the things that concerns me at a strategic level is this lack of connectedness. I know Emma's done an awful lot of work in trying to remedy that, but it is still there in that we've got 3 applications before us which are showing 3 completely different plans for this junction. So I don't know whether you'd like to comment on that.
So on that specific point, the transport assessment work sets when a planning application is registered.
Yeah.
So our application has had to take into all applications registered prior to ours going in, which includes the Iconics Park application. The Upplesford work, they've been doing some separate work on their proposals down there, but it's not a registered application, so the line in the sand is when it's registered. So we've taken all of the applications in the area considered and told to us by the county, plus we've then been told to put on a background multiplier on top, which is approximately 20%, and then we put our own projections on top of that. So you don't just mitigate yourself, you mitigate everything that's gone before you, plus the background growth over the length of your proposed project, plus yourself on top. There are other issues we can come on to, but this is an outline application.
Yes,
there is significant delay in start on site. We have no problems in putting our money, our proposals to something that's infinitely better in terms of coming forward. There is plenty of time for that, but we know the proposals we've come up with is what the county have been happy with in terms of us putting those proposals forward. But, you know, if a better solution, and I would love a better solution, I'd love the A11 to the M11 to be on the agenda, you know, that money could be utilised for those works.
Would you not feel it more appropriate for an application on this scale to come forward as part of a future local plan review, in which all these issues could be addressed holistically?
In a perfect world, that would be exactly the way this should happen, but it's the length of time. You know, the local plan started in 2010. In my career, I've been through 2 cycles, and I'm not pointing a finger at anyone, but I have to give certainty to people, you know, who want to come and be on the site, and I can't give any certainty until I've got planning. We've also got the electricity issue to take on board as well. And again, that can't start until we've got a planning commission. So it's chicken and egg on every front. I totally understand. But we've tried to be a good neighbour today, want to carry that on. And I totally agree that coordinating these things is the way forward, in terms of not just the sites, but the business parks existing and public transport, and the future look of the A505 and the A1307 and the proposals there. You know, this will be coming along, and I have no problem with our money going to something that will help solve the bigger picture.
Okay.
So picking up on that, have you been talking with the Combined Authority, the Greater Cambs Partnership and the Highways England, because they've obviously been heavily involved in looking in this area, and so what communication have you had with them as well?
Lots. So the first pitch was hopefully going to come out as a positive in the autumn statement 2 autumn statements ago, and that didn't happen. Then Heidi Allen, the local MP, then started up a group to work forward on the A505. So we went to the first 2 of those meetings and provided all of our transport data to the county for free to update them their information. We've been talking with Greater Cambridge Partnership regarding the Whittlesford Parkway station and what could happen there. And putting at every opportunity, every time there's been a consultation, we've put reams of documentation in about how this needs to be better coordinated. And we've even put reps into the National Infrastructure Commission as well to try and make them look at this area. So there comes a point where what more do you have to, you know what I mean? We will support everything that comes forward. The A505 is potentially on a list, but it's a long list. It's not in the first tranche of funding from the GCP. And there's another new government incentive that should be funded through road tax coming forward, announced later on in this year. But again, it's these things take time to come forward in terms of getting through.
No, because obviously with the 1307, that will have an impact on that area, with people coming in to and fro. That as you're fully aware, then with the Greater Cambridge partnership that's been brought forward to tranche 1, and what we're looking at there. So, what are you doing? How are you would you be assisted in that matter? Should they come to you with the cap in hand?
I've been working with a lot of the local landowners and also their agent at the Greater Cambridge Partnership to look at what we could be doing in terms of land ownership, what could be delivered, how it could come back, where we could get better cycleways, and linking the whole thing together. You know, in terms of bringing it together with the A1307, that work factors into what the County Council have asked us to model, which is this background growth. So if we don't come forward, there will be background growth in the area, and we've been told what that is and had to put that in the model first before we even add ourselves on top. So we are effectively future-proofing the background growth for 10 to 12 years in the area, according to the County Council figures.
Just on the, if I may, on the 505, there's a suggestion that instead of taking the current route, which can't really be widened here, so we can't provide dual carriageway along the route of the 505 because it's too close to the transport depot, and so on, problems with the bridge and so there was a suggestion that there's a potential route behind the Volvo and transport section and coming out actually really quite close to your site, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at maybe whether you have an east flow or a west flow road.
Right.
So you're not building brand new 4-lane of carriageway.
Yes.
So, you know, with a link road, utilising it. The difficulty is that doesn't mitigate our scheme. That's bigger than us.
Sure.
You know, that is not mitigating what we're doing.
No.
You know, I can't be seen to be trying to over-mitigate in that sense. But I totally agree with you. This is a really big issue that needs to be fleshed out. But the ridiculous thing is you have to be registered for the numbers to be counted in terms of the modelling.
Yes, I mean, I appreciate the dilemma because, in a way, you're just a piece in this jigsaw which is developing around here. And
I'm trying to bring the picture together, though. I am trying.
I know you are, yes. But we obviously have to have concern for the wider picture.
Yeah, and I do have total sympathy on that front.
Well, we know that Emma is
do,
very
yes,
active
we
with
do,
the
yes,
rail
yes,
user
yes.
group and
Yes,
so on
no, acknowledge that.
to
Yes,
try
yes, yes,
and
yeah,
you know, bring a coherent picture together. But it's terribly difficult. We haven't even talked about the logistics depot going into Spices, which will again increase traffic.
Yes. But that's an existing permission, so we have no control over that. So
Understood.
yeah.
But we've had to take that into account in our figures because it's already there. So,
Yes,
you know, the next person who comes on takes us into account. You know, that's how
Yes, I don't think it was there as the specific logistical, although Spices was that, wasn't it?
The B8 permission has always been there, so you know, I mean, theoretically, it had always been used for that purpose. It's just that for the last 10 years, it's been virtually an empty site, and now we have a user. There is a user. Right, does anyone else have any questions? Janet?
Yes, I've got a couple of questions or observations. They're trying to bring out the questions, and that was about what the local benefit of this would be to Sawston and people in Sawston. And there were several ways I could see it possibly working. I mean, one is to do with the bus services. You've got this a link with Whittlesford Parkway, but we have this continual problem of not having a good bus route into Whittlesford, and obviously there's lots of other proposals going around that may help that. But I wondered about one option being a kind of maybe a circular bus route or some way of linking up maybe to your route.
I totally agree with you, and I think it also links into the new proposals for any park and ride coming for the A1307. You could see a circular bus that goes round the business parks and the villages, just keeps going round, and you could do it anti-clockwise as well.
Yes.
But having spent a lot of time talking with Whittlesford and Stagecoach, the biggest issue is getting access into the station. It takes too long, they can't back out, they can't get round. And obviously the Whippet service is now gone, but that's where we came up with... Well, no, but it's under threat, significantly under threat, but that was where the bus drop-off and pick-up scenario was, and that would be the park buses and the private buses and the public buses all being able to just drop off and pick up without having to go down anywhere and speed up the service. Because the figures are ridiculous. It's 27 minutes from Sawston to Whittlesford station, but it's only 6 minutes to drive. You know, you wouldn't mind, would you catch the bus if you had a car, in all honesty?
It's only 6 minutes to come back, actually.
It's only half an hour to walk.
Yeah, exactly. 34 minutes it said on Google to walk. So. And actually the quickest way is to get off at the bottom of Sawston and then walk, actually, because the bus takes longer to go round than the bus does.
Yeah, it's only 2 stops anyway, isn't it? Yeah, so anyway.
The other, can I just raise one other point, and that was about business to the drawing business into the high street, and I think that some kind of circular bus will probably help that. I mean, obviously you'll have what's at the McDonald's roundabout and the Marks and Spencers, but it'd be nice if people had maybe came into Sawston and it helped generate business in that way. Can I just say one third thing, and that's about access to the site, which I mentioned. I noticed you've got quite a bit in there about footpaths and the natural swimming pond, etc. It would be nice to think that people would be able to go and walk there as well. Are there any security reasons to prevent that?
That's exactly what we want to achieve. I've spent a lot of time looking at open access design in Birmingham, in London, and other places. The day that somebody decides to ride their horse through the site is the day I'm a very happy lady. You know, there are not enough big open spaces we're creating for people, and the parkland really is quite special, as is the avenue. And, you know, opening that up for the benefit of those working on site and those living nearby, I think is a massive asset to the area. You can't really see it from the road now, and at the moment it looks a little sad, but in summer it really is quite special.
Yes, I mean, I'd like to sort of push you a bit on that, because one of the, I think when you first came to talk to us a couple of years ago, you were mentioning CRISPR and gene editing technique, and that therefore would be genetic modification work being done on that site. I think if that type of work were being done there, and indeed any work which involves intellectual property, which you're going to have security issues which might mitigate against open access.
I think, well, first of all, GM and CRISPR are different technologies in terms of where they are.
CRISPR is a
yes. But that can only be done under licence, and in my understanding is those locations are very secret, and they're not anywhere near anybody would know or publicise. We're not promoting that to be tested on site. We fully accept that this is an open access site, and therefore people will be buying into that. But we do have a network of sort of 25 acres of farmers around us that if, you know, people want to trial a sensor in a soily environment or a gravelly environment, we will be working with other farmers locally to help facilitate that. But we are not promoting anything that is against, you know, government regulations on site. Open access is the key to this. It's got to be friendly for farmers to come in, it's got to be friendly for technical people to come in, and for people to mix. That's the whole point. And we've taken a lot of advice on how that can happen. But in terms of local people, I mean, there's a lot of local businesses that are very interested in the site. We've had interest from business in Whittlesford, from Sawston, Duncan's here.
That was what I wanted to raise, because Janet was asking about local businesses, and I wanted to say that Cambridge Sustainable Food Hub is actually, would it be fair to say, led by Duncan, who's based in Sawston, has been running an organic vegetable box company,
But so he's been part of the discussions to build this new company on the site as well. And so it's very interesting for Sawston. It has genuine links to local businesses. It will offer new and interesting facilities there. For the kind of initiative that Duncan's talking about. There was an interview with Duncan in not the current Sawston Steam, but the previous one, I think. And I just wanted to, make that connection that the facility that he was talking about starting and the people that he was talking to was in fact these guys. And that was all sounded very interesting.
I've been very happy to give a 2 or 3 minute short presentation about what the food hub.
Well, if you're conscious of the time,
yeah.
actually, but just
just
a few words here.
A couple of salient points, yes.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, anybody that wants to have a briefing on them.
But what you're doing is not research, so I've had some difficulty in seeing how you relate to this.
Well, so actually, research is going to be it is one of the 6 sort of key impacts that we're promising to deliver with this, and particularly research as to sort of how food distribution models look like in the future to be more sustainable. So yeah, it is going to be a sort of a primarily a storage and distribution centre for food that's come directly from farms that are local to Cambridge, very much with a sort of a sustainability slant to it, but it's also going to be a place that is open to the public. So it's going to have retail, it's going to have a cafe there. Janet, you mentioned the swimming lake, and we're going to be the natural pond, so we're going to be adjacent to that, and so it'll be a nice destination. People can come and have their go for a swim in the morning and have their breakfast sort of sitting lakeside afterwards. So I think that I talked about the 6 key impacts, and I promised just 1 or 2 salient points. So 2 of those impact points that I think could be beneficial to Sawston. One is the education programme that we're going to be running there. So this is going to be a place where a coachload of children from Dickneld or Belbourne or William Wesley could come along. They could go, they see food growing in the field, and I think the field that's in the bottom left-hand corner down there as well, it's been earmarked for growing food for the food hub. See food growing there, come into the food hub to learn about sustainability, nutrition, and then actually do some food preparation within the training kitchen. The other one is what we're calling the Good Food for All scheme. This is a scheme that's being put in place to make good quality, healthy food more accessible to local low-income households, and therefore try and address food poverty locally. We've got some really good partners working with us in this: Cambridge City Council, Ellenbrooks Hospital, Cambridge University. So we had a workshop in November, a team of university students that have picked up the some of the ideas that came out of that workshop and have put together an action plan of how that scheme might move forwards. I hasten to add, this project is independent of Smithson Hill. We've been working towards it for several years, and you may recall that sort of, in fact, almost two years ago to the day, we tried to acquire the Woodhead Publishing building. We were unsuccessful on that occasion, but what we were successful in doing is raising sort of crowdfunding £8,000 in multiples of £100, and a lot of that came from villages. So hopefully it's something that has resonated with the population.
Yes, I'm not saying what you're doing is not interesting and important, but what I'm still trying to get my head around how this fits into a research environment, which is what this project's being sold on.
Well, yes, I suppose you need, there's provision, you need provision of, the cafe and the shop will be a facility that people who are working on the site can use themselves, but also people from the local area can come and go to. But as I said, You did specifically ask about research, and I said about key impact number 6 being, we're trying to answer the questions of how food might be distributed more sustainably in the future. And one of my big ambitions for this project is to be accepted into, and it is being considered for acceptance into what's called the Rising Food Stars Programme, which is something that's run by EIT Food, that's a European Commission arm. I think if the Rising Food Stars are the 50 sort of most promising startup food businesses in the whole of Europe. So I think to achieve that would be a great deal of prestige for our project. It is, that programme is very specifically about sort of industrial and academic collaboration, so it's about applied research. So, for example, I'm presenting to the MRC Epidemiology Unit next month, who will be considering whether they would like to make a proposition for a research project. For example, how the presence of a food hub within a community would affect the levels of public health within that community. So, there is a research angle to it. Yes.
Okay. Kevin, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, mine's financial. As we all know, the science parks around there get government grants and European grants. So where's your funding coming from, and how sustainable is it? And also, after a comment you just made about funding from the EU, what impact, if any, and we don't know where we are, will Brexit have?
Well, fundamentally it isn't a research part, it's commercialising the research part. So the people we've been talking to are actually businesses that want to set up in order to be taking the research from Cambridge, from Norwich, from Lincoln, from Essex, and actually commercialise it, very similar to what the biomedical campus does in terms of the commercialisation. So that's number one, is that we are not actively seeking input financially from government into this project. It's commercial companies that want to be next to people doing the research in Cambridge, of which there is lots. It's just that Agritech is not as visible as it should be in the area. And that's been the main problem, is that it needs a home and it needs to be visible. In terms of the EU issues, I think the focus in the spotlight is directly on Agritech as one of the 4 pillars for the future industrial strategy. Gove announced last week that we've got 5 more years of subsidies. We can't wait for 5 years. We've got to be looking at these technologies now, and we've got to be testing them with real farmers, and we've got to be getting them out there. And I think, the businesses we've been speaking to, they want to come. We've been talking with Lincoln University. They want to be here in order to commercialise their, high-tech mechanical and engineering side of their work they've been doing. It really is very, very now, and the need is now as well, in terms of, where the country is seen going forward, especially in a post-Brexit sort of world.
Okay. Right, Brian, and
just a quick question, if I may, about the scale of the operation. If it got to full capacity, how many jobs and people are we talking about supporting in the current plan?
This has never really been done before. So we've taken a formulae using office space, and that has provided us with the number of people on site. We know the reality is that we will be having tractor sheds potentially where they're tinkering with bits of engineering through to, yes, offices and other bits. We've taken what we believe to be the worst case scenario and tested that, so we're not trying to shy away. That is what the pure office-led scenario shows on site, which is 4,000 people. But the honest truth is we will have to be assessed on a reserve matters by reserve matters application as we go through, as to what those facilities are and who's working on them. And the answer is probably a mixture in terms of what people do.
Okay. Thank you. I'm conscious of the time. If there's any urgent question covering a topic that we haven't discussed already, I'm prepared to take it, but otherwise I'll ask for a proposal.
Well, I'd like to comment that although I was originally in two minds about this, because whilst I can see the huge advantage, it's a great idea, but obviously the transport is an issue, is a real issue. But on the other hand, I think it's an issue that's more likely to be solved by developments coming together with money that will then be able to work with and help unlock the other aspects of funding that we talked about through GCP and that sort of thing. And to be honest, I think developers with real kind of needs and as it was what the Americans say, skin in the game, you know, some real reason for making it happen, I think are more likely to generate effective change than government schemes.
Or a property developer, you know. People can build thousands of houses there, sell them, and then just bugger off. They've got absolutely no interest in what happens to those houses when they flood, fall down, or how those people travel around. But this is a proposal to build an ongoing business. So I think that's right. And the people who build that business have a vested interest in people being able to get to and from it reasonably.
So do I
So I think that was where I was getting to, yes. I was trying to be succinct. So on that basis, I think I would like to propose support.
Okay, do I have a second? So seconded by Janet. Okay. So we have a proposal for support. All those in favour of that proposal?
Are we not going to have any discussion at all?
Well, I thought we had a discussion, sorry. Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, I can understand what's being said, but on the other hand, this is, in a sense, a new park, which is quite unlike some of the other parks around, such as Granter Park, based on TWI and the Bagram campus and the Welcome Trust. So this is, in a sense, a new campus being created. And it's of such a scale that I think it's inappropriate to take it in isolation from what is the potential for other developments around it. I feel that this would be better considered in the revision of the local plan. Once it's approved, there's a commitment to undertake a review of that local plan in conjunction with Cambridge City from 2019 onwards, and I think that's the appropriate place for something of this scale, because this is not necessarily, it might be a good site for such an activity, but in the whole scheme of things within South Cambs, there might be other sites that might be as good or perhaps better or maybe worse. And in a sense, I think it needs to be seen in that wider context rather than just an isolated planning application, a very, very major, large planning application. And in my view, I think at this stage, I wouldn't want to support it because I think it needs to be seen in that wider context. I mean, we know what's potentially around. There's Sawston Trade Park, there's North Ucklersford. We don't know what the Welcome Trust are proposing, but they are likely to be coming forward with something in the not too distant future. And in a sense, I think it really needs a master plan for the whole area looking forward to the next 10, 15, 20 years. Otherwise, you're going to have a piecemeal development here, maybe a piecemeal development of there, somewhere else, very close by, all impacting on the roads. Should say that, for example, I understand that at Granter Park, the average distance travelled by workers on that site is 20 miles each way. So, in the sense that it's not only local roads here, it's roads elsewhere. There's a big impact of that.
So isn't that an argument to say that local government and central governments ought to get their act together because there's economic development opportunities staring in the face and we're not doing what we need to locally to make it happen?
That's the point I was going to make.
To work together.
So could we have one at a time? So
But that's why we need to work together to see the whole picture, not a site here or a site there.
If we had any confidence in the ability of people who've been discussing the local plan endlessly for years, then I think that would be a convincing argument. As it is, I think most of us around this table feel that before the local plan gets approval, we could all be dead and in boxes in the ground. I mean, what the hell is happening there? I don't think we can wait for it. We can't put everything on hold and wait for them to get their act together, because we've seen absolutely no evidence that they're ever going to. It's shambolic.
Yeah, but you
We
could
have
get
to make our own local decisions. You know, we need to get our act together and get a neighbourhood plan moving as well, so we can make local decisions at that level. But you know, if that's how the process, if the process worked how it's meant to work, then yes, but it's not working.
Janice and then Roger.
Well, I was just going to say, presumably because it's on our agenda as an outline planning application, we're perfectly within our rights as parish council to take a vote on.
Yes, yes, you are. Yes,
so I think we should do that. I would like to suggest that maybe we need to make some comment attached to it about the transportation and the communication links. I don't know if that's helpful to you or not, but about, you know, all these proposals working together. I think that would be helpful to say, because obviously there is local concern about that.
Yeah. Roger.
Yeah, before they start doing these buildings, they want to get the roads sorted out for a start. Because at the moment, it's going to be chaos, and they will not change, even when they build it. They'll still be the same. Till they start doing the roads, sorting that out, they shall build us all. There should be no building at all.
Taking on board what was recently been said, and to a degree, I agree with what Tony's saying, is we need to look at this more holistically and go to the and the local plan's coming to its end now, that we are fully aware, so we are actually looking at a too great a timescale. Sort of off the cuff a little bit is, when it came to Cambridge City football ground, the thing that was put into them was they had to look all over the area, and it had to be that specific spot which was only going to work for them. Is that actually the case we got here? That they've looked at every other potential, and is there any other, and it's the only answer you've got?
We've done a full report, it's in the planning application. We haven't just done locally, we've done the whole of East Anglia.
Cambridge City did the whole of Cambridgeshire, and they still weren't happy with it. So there's still, I agree with Tony, I still think there's a lot of argument in here.
You can read the report, we've been through all the different sites.
I appreciate that, but no, there is still arguments in there to be had.
Right. Do I have any other speakers? Roger.
If you look at development in general, you know, what Beck said, it is taking a long time to see things come out. It's about time the parish council looks at what is possible and move things to get things done. Otherwise we'll be waiting 5, 10, 15, 20 years for developments of that nature to come through.
Right. I have no further speakers. Could Beck
Can I just suggest that the person at Janet's point, I think she's absolutely right that we should push in a condition that, you know, subject to serious concerns about transport infrastructure, and that we can work with these guys in the way that they suggested. I'm not sure. There's been a lot of goodwill expressed, and I'm not sure how much of that is documented.
So
I think it's about 150 pages of consultation, and lots does revolve around traffic and transport.
I think there are something like, I think the current count's 251 documents on the inside. Right, so I have a proposal and a seconder that we support this application. Could those in favour of that proposal please indicate now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And those against? 3.
3.
And 2 no votes. Okay. Thank you very much. Good. Right, so returning to the main agenda. So, I mean, if you're obviously very welcome to stay if you wish.
I have done that.
As I say, everyone's very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. Please don't feel obliged to if you have a Right, so, moving on to the other applications. S451517 FL, which is a two-storey side and rear extension at 10 Hillside, Sawston, household application.
I will abstain because I live in Hillside and the couple that I've had it's often helped me do beavers, so I will abstain.
This is the large one on Hillside, isn't it?
It is a hillside, it's a 10 Hillside, yes,
It's not the last one. It's the fifth one in the traffic lights.
It's a very big
I think it's
standalone.
that one.
It's the big one. It's the one where they have the crop curb,
Yeah,
where
so
all
is
the
it the
cars
white
go
door?
along the
Yes,
path.
there is a
On
there
the
are
road.
pages on
Yeah.
site.
It's the one with the white door.
So is that on
Yes.
the left-hand side?
That's
That's the
it.
one that's
It's-
fairly recently been
Yes, that one there,
installed,
that's
isn't it?
that's it.
And the reason I did the here is they're talking about doing a side development down the side and then a almost double the size house at the back.
Yes, yeah.
So I'll bring up the plan.
Yes, it will be visible from the road.
That's the rear.
Side extended, yeah.
And that's the plan of the existing house as we see on the right hand side in
Quite
black.
substantial, isn't it?
And that's the size of the extension.
Oh, so it's slightly visible from the road, but
Yes,
Yeah.
so is it
it's
single
going to
space?
have it's
And
going
not sitting
to,
outside.
yeah, you need to bring up one of the external elevations, but yes, it's going to have like a two-storey extension at the back and then a little bit stuck out that'll be single-storey on the side that will be visible from the road. You need to look at, oh, you almost got it there, Brian.
It's coming back there.
Yeah, there it
Oh.
is, that top, that first one in the top left-hand corner is the one you'll see from the road. So I don't know whether there's something that's saying it's possibly a little bit imbalanced, I don't know.
Well, it's destroying the symmetry of the house,
Yeah.
but all the houses along there are different styles and shapes and sizes.
There's
aren't
no
they? I think
two
you'd be-
really the same unless they're
No,
terraced.
so I don't think, I mean,
And I think
you can't really object on aesthetic grounds, can you?
there's
Well,
some,
there is an issue about street scene, so...
but that's, I think they've
Yeah,
done
but that's what I'm saying,
a
it's very
good job
diverse.
at disguising it from the street. And as they pointed out, and they've cited all the local planning applications that have been made up and down Hillside that have all manner of extensions in and out of keeping with the local area. So, and it's not particularly going to make a big difference to the frontage on Hillside. And it's a very large plot. You know, they haven't got any issue with you know, the size of the garden. Sorry, I'll find the plan.
I was just going to say, thinking about the compatibility of the building materials, there was something in there about grey aluminium windows. I mean, I'd be happier if there was a compatibility with the brickwork and the
But the general heritage line now is that they don't want you to match and make it look as though it's always been there. They want you to make it look visibly different.
It is notoriously difficult to match bricks. I mean, even when we had the extension built on a house, which was at that time only about 30 years old, you can't match bricks exactly the same.
Matching loaf of bread.
So,
Propose no objection.
Okay, do I have a second objection to? Okay, Brian. Is there no further discussion? I'll move to a vote. All those in favour of no objection, please indicate now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are you sorry, Ray? You up or down? Up. 3, 4, 6.
Those against?
Against
1. Those abstaining? 4. And 2 no votes. And Neil declared an interest, which we'll so discharge and conditions of planning application at Sawston Village College. I see that has actually been discharged now, so this is really only for information. It's been going on for some time related to the heritage statement, relating to the windows on the old library.
Planning department cited the wrong original plan as well, by the way, which didn't help very much.
I couldn't actually find
It is on there.
Is it there? Is that
There was the reference now, it's not.
I was
But
going to say.
it was the district council that got the reference from.
Oh, right, okay, because I did search for it, it was various combinations.
Well, I entered that and that came up. Anyway, that's it.
But it's
So are we asked to make a comment or not, or is it for
well,
no,
it's really confirmations. It's been discharged. Okay. So internally illuminated west of 48A High Street, Sawston, which is the new co-op undertakers.
As far as I'm aware, this will just be in the place where an illuminated sign would normally be. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
can I
As far as
propose
I
we
can see.
support it?
What's
It's where the barbers was.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
It's also barbers,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
And
And
so
it's just-
the illuminated sign will be up where presumably his barber sign used to be before they moved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Follow that.
And you certainly seem to,
Yeah, propose
I'm happy to second.
support, yeah,
certainly seem to
proposal.
very unexceptional.
Sorry, mate,
Okay. So those in favour of the objection?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know what Ray's doing.
I'll lose those.
8, 4.
Right.
Bless you.
David,
Yes.
could I bring this up as a related matter, or does it need to be in any other business? That there's been a gigantic sign at 56 High Street, which I'm
Sorry, can
I'm
we just finish the vote?
Yes,
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
another
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
that
yes,
was
yeah.
another thing.
Yes, who brings up the end on the council's
Yeah.
business is probably better,
So
yeah.
we've got 8, 4 against.
Yes, yeah. Those against? Those abstaining? 3. And 2 no votes.
Thank you.
Right, so this is the discharge of condition 26, contaminated land, relating to the planning permission S069614BC, which in turn is a renewal of a permission granted in 2010 on
Is
this
the old mile site?
It is the old
Well,
mile
this was the
site,
one we
yes.
had last
Yes.
in December, didn't we? And we said we'd put it an agenda item when certifications have been clarified, but I haven't had anything.
Well, all I can say is that the units are being advertised for let at the moment, or where none are being constructed. And that's basically the situation. I mean, there's a link to a website on the display out there, so I don't know. There's an awful lot to discuss, but if anyone wishes to comment,
Well, I was going to say that I did have a look at this one. It's to do with the contamination. It's contaminated air, isn't
Yes,
it,
yeah.
from the ground?
Well,
Is
it
that
is.
right?
I suspect the main contaminant is asbestos because it's used for tile manufacture. But in that period, asbestos was used to stabilise tiles.
And there was quite a strong letter on the website which is about the conditions not having been met previously and requiring them to make proposals rather either removal or rendering harmless of the contamination. Now there's what looks like a brochure on the site about a clean air blanket.
Yeah.
Now is that their solution to the problem, or is that what they suggested before? Because there is no kind of argument as to how this clean air blanket would relate to that particular site. It's a
There's
general
no context.
brochure. There's a general brochure. So I mean, I think it's something of concern if there is still contamination there.
There
That
was
we as a village ought to be concerned about that the rendering harmless.
There was a proviso in there, if you remember, that was to say that if further contamination is found, then the work should stop until it's been remedied.
Well, as I say, the letter implies that the measures they were putting forward before for discharge of condition were not adequate.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we should say that something like the documentation isn't clear, but we'd like to be assured that the contamination has either been removed or rendered harmless.
Yes, before they're allowed to rent it out to anybody else.
Yeah. I mean, we
Yes,
say
that's
something
great,
like
that's
that.
great, yeah.
But the point that you made last time, Chairman, was that this is the site that's a lot of housing.
Yes, it is. Yes.
And if somebody goes ahead and builds warehouses, they're going to be far less likely or amenable to having to knock them down to put houses there.
I have discussed this at some length with the local plans team, but
Yes.
apparently, well, there is an existing permission on there, and permission is not withdrawn.
So that if they discharge their duties under this contamination,
yes, I mean there is
then they're free to go ahead.
Yes, I mean there's no obligation according to
Which is why we need to be assured that any discharge of conditions is adequate for health and safety grounds.
Yes.
Well, I think the bigger issue on this site surely is that it's the non-contentious site in the local plan for new housing. Sat there waiting for it, and if the owners or their agents are going to start developing industrial units on it, then that may well scupper the plans to the non-contentious site.
It's all a bit of a mess, isn't it?
Yes, but equally, if there's untreated contamination there that hasn't been dealt with, that's also going to scupper local plans if we don't get local plans.
Right, so do I have a proposal?
Proposal that no discharge of condition is made without assurance that without a full report giving assurance that measures being put in place about removal or rendering harmless any
You don't need
contamination.
a full report, just a coherent statement of what
In this respect, if you are looking for assurance, it is wrong. Because this is a contaminated site by asbestos. They must give an undertaking that they will deal with that first. Not assurance.
Confirmation analysis.
Okay, well that's a better word.
Confirmation analysis would be
Yeah. They're dealing with it, and that the measures proposed will indeed deal with it. That's the issue.
The clearing asbestos is a well-established process. There are professional companies who do it under license. The university a couple of years ago got prosecuted because they didn't do it properly. So it's
very easy to miss it.
Asbestos in soil is more typical.
You see, what the proposal is that they have some kind of blanket. It's not going to be removed. They're going to have some kind of blanket. Is that adequate?
Well, would you like to live in a house that was protected?
This is my question.
Perhaps they're hoping to just slither under the radar and that nobody's going to question.
I mean, it will have to satisfy environmental criteria. You don't just go to the council and say we've got a solution and we want to sort of nod it through. So
Janet, are you supporting with
there
this?
There is an objective technical analysis.
Or what, with the discharge of conditions?
I think we're
confirmation.
Are we objecting to discharge condition until we've seen solid evidence that they've actually treated properly?
I think what you're asking for is confirmation the job's been done properly, isn't it?
And say evidence.
Some independent assessment that it's been clear.
So it doesn't have to be, all we need is evidence. So say evidence instead of confirmation or assurance or any other word.
Okay. So that's a proposal. Beck's proposed that. You've seconded it.
Yes.
All those in favour of that proposal?
Right, hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4, right.
Okay. Abstention? And 2 no votes. Yeah, okay. That is everybody, isn't it? Right, so moving on to agenda item 177, which is the accounts for December 2017. Any questions? The ABM accounts are circulated with the applicant.
I'll declare an interest in Scouts, so we'll possibly be receiving a cheque.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I propose we accept. We should note that it's the updated version of direct debit,
Yes,
so
thank
the
you,
legal
yeah.
is not the version of the original pack.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Janet. All those in favour? That's
Yeah.
okay. So are you
Yeah,
saying?
that's everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Abstention. Right, to discuss different bank accounts for reserve money. Rashid has very kindly done quite a bit of research for us. See the accounts. So would you like to, yes, so would you like to speak to this item? Okay.
If you look at interest rates for 1 year and 2 years, if you go to the normal banks, you'll not get a good return. We need to go a little bit either to Close Brothers Savings, Hodge Bank, Eldermore, Metro Bank, and Carter and Private Bank. Only private banks is the only way you can get some better return.
Yeah.
To give an example, Close Brothers for a rate for 1 year is 1.6%. They don't offer a 2-year fixed rate. Hodge Bank will give us 1.5%, and over 2 years 1.8%. Aldermore 1.5%, for 2 years 1.55. Metro Bank is 1.2, and Carter and Private Bank is 0.7.
Right. And are all these AAA rated institutions, are they?
A plus.
A plus.
A plus. AAA rated.
Yeah.
You should bear in mind we are only investing to the limit of 85,000.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
So we are fully protected.
Yes, yes.
And we are not investing for long term. It's just 1 or 2 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And being a parish council, we get corporate rates, not private rates.
Yeah,
that's the difference.
Yes, yeah.
That is why we are looking at private banks.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask a question. I think you might have just answered it though about whether the banks you're suggesting would accept parish council accounts.
I would recheck.
Yeah, you've checked that. And
I would, and that's why they are on the list. I spoke to them in person.
Yeah.
So because I'm aware, some of them don't accept.
Yeah, okay.
I've spoken to them.
Yeah, that's why. I asked it. I knew some didn't. Yeah.
So Kieran and then Brian.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're looking, when we looked at the reserves in F and GP when we set the budget, they're spread out over a number of different accounts, but the bulk of which, the bulk is about 380k. And that was what we wanted to split out in order to get the
protection.
The protection.
Yes,
so we're looking at maybe, I mean, we can obviously leave 85k in Cambridge Building Society, that would be fine, but therefore we're looking at taking about 300.
But is it worth saying that the point of diversifying wasn't necessarily to increase the rate of return that we were getting on the money, because with present interest rates that's always going to be negligible. The point of diversifying was that you've got too much money in the same institutions and they're therefore not covered by the government guarantee or the bank that fails, which only takes you up to 85 years.
So, but what I was going to say is that we could easily do 4 different accounts.
Yes.
I mean, that doesn't quite come to, but 5 with the Building Society.
And then, for example, taking account of what the research that Rajin has done, to put the most or a maximum sum of 85 grand into the 2-year account, because then because we're not going to have to touch that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, equally the less the lower rates just distributed as efficiently as we can.
Well, I think we would need 3 lots of 85 if we're. I think it makes sense to leave 85 in the Building Society because we should support the Building Society. So that just leaves one account which will have about 40k in, assuming the 380 is about where we are at the moment, because obviously we committed, we bought tractors and things like that. But
Kieran, you must bear in mind, Cambridge Building Society just gives us 0.15% interest. Putting £85,000 with them is letting us down.
No, but our primary concern is not profit.
It's not profit.
No, I'm not saying profit. I'm not saying profit.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not saying we don't support Cambridge Building Society. Don't get me wrong. I made a comment that they, irrespective of what we have with them, they only offer 0.15%.
And if there's no impediment to moving it elsewhere and getting more money, there's no particular benefit in leaving it in the county goods.
Well, except they have to have some money in reasonably easy access accounts.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
We've got to have easy access money, and we've got to be able to deposit cash, because
Exactly, exactly.
a bucket full of cash.
Except we can't, they don't.
Except they won't know.
And also the
They won't
donations
accept.
account is separate anyway,
You
so.
can't pay cash into
What, my understanding was that the money that we will keep in various accounts is money that we not need for any other place.
Exactly, yes.
Whatever we need for our day-to-day running has to be very close by building society of that.
I only wanted to endorse what Beck said. I think it is important that we do invest in reputable banks, and also ones which, our public, our residents of Sawston would see as appropriate for us to be keeping our money in. So that's my only concern about it.
I think that is understandable.
Yes.
But if a bank is FCA regulated, or whichever authority it is, so they're based in the UK and they're covered by the UK legislation, then even if they're not necessarily ones that we heard of.
The findings that are called out, huge institutions in their own right.
Yeah, just,
I would not put them on the short list.
they're not household
I
names,
just
but
want to
they
make that point.
But they won't be, because they're all private banks.
Sure. Well,
Yes, I guess.
on the basis about interest rates, then, how about I make a proposal that we open accounts with the first 4 of these, so that the highest interest rates, Close Brothers, Hodge, Aldermore and Metro. With Hodge and Aldermore we take a 2-year rate. We put 85 in each of those, leaving us with 40k in Cambridge Building Society.
Will that be sufficient for
Well,
the
that's
first
cheaper, I think it would be,
Okay.
so as long as we could agree to.
Yes.
I can second that, but it's better somebody else does.
Okay. Second, okay. I think
And then
this needs to be in consultation with the clerk, actually.
Yeah.
as to
Well,
what
we
to
can
do.
get
So,
together.
Yeah,
so I
but
think,
in principle,
yes. I mean, I'm happy to delegate it to you two and the clerk, actually, so you can look at that, actually. So,
Do you want to amend your proposal to a maximum of 85k in each of those accounts,
Yes.
but then make an unspecified sum for our working capital to stay with CBS?
Yeah.
So that might need to be.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Okay,
it's probably more a case of,
Yeah.
because we don't normally say
Yes.
what we put in which account.
yeah.
Then we just propose that we open those 4 accounts.
We have
Yes,
4
okay,
accounts.
okay, that's fine.
Distribute it efficiently.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
At
okay.
the clerk's discretion.
So that's a proposal like here, and seconded by Brian. All those in favour of that proposal?
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much for doing that, Ryan.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. Yeah, right, so update on community hub. There is none.
There is
Okay.
none.
Very good.
You'll have the email that.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
The centre is still working.
Yeah.
The cemetery.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I think if I'd like to, I know that the county councillors are here, and I'm sure that you're not exactly sitting on your proverbials, but I do think it would be worth the parish council writing to do whatever we can officially to encourage, to say basically, how does it take so many months to finalise legal agreements and not even get
But
them
it's also
signed?
it's a nothing answer. What legal agreements? Legal agreements with whom? Because last time we were at a community hub update, they tried to say that the problem was the parish council.
We signed ours off about 4 months before.
Well, exactly. It was only because there were so many parish council members there that we're able to say, excuse us, that is simply not true. I mean, and the other reason their project manager gave, she's just come back from leave. Well, unless she's been away for the last 6 months. I emailed her in November to say, is there any news? And I simply didn't get any response at all. I didn't get an out of office. I didn't get, I've gone away, I'm ill. I didn't get any response from anybody else who was filling in. This is just not, it's not a professional or competent way to run a project apart from anything else. It just seems
Do you want me to write officially?
Yes.
Well,
Rather than
I'd like to
emails?
propose that,
Yeah.
yes, because I'm worried about the quality of project management.
Yeah.
And not, if they can't even get us this far, I have what hope have
Yeah.
what
How
or
they can
belief
build
that
it
that
if
they'll
they
actually
can't.
build it.
Right,
It
second
didn't
of facts.
help at that meeting that they didn't know other things that were going on.
So I have a proposal.
And a second.
And a second.
I'll write
that
officially.
we write.
But this is really specifically a
Yeah,
county
it is.
council problem about the quality of their staff. We've had one good project manager at the start, Helen Hollivan, and since then we've had
I know,
nobody
I know.
who seems able to cope with the job at
So who
all.
would you suggest we write
Well,
to, Kevin? Because it's it
Your
needs to
guess
show-
is as good as mine, because I've been having the same problem, you know.
Oh,
Well, the chief executive.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking,
But
yeah.
what's the point of having elected county council representatives if you can't find out about something as big and important and involving such large sums of money as this?
Because you've answered your own question, you've been trying to contact him, all you've been getting back is not about...
I'm not an elected member of the county council. It's
Well,
supposed to be
how am I
representing
supposed to get
Sawston.
hold of someone that isn't there?
Yeah.
As people on the bookshelf, isn't it?
It doesn't.
Okay, right, well, I'm going to write
Okay,
officially, so
yes, yes.
we've had it proposed and seconded.
I'll go to
Yeah.
something due to the chief
Just
executive.
point
Yeah,
something
exactly.
out.
Yes.
I was just going to point out that I think a few meetings ago, did we
Beasley.
request that we be represented at meetings to do with community health? And I think that Neil and I were agreed as though
Yeah.
Yes, you
representatives.
were,
But
yes.
it's
There haven't been any.
There's
We
not been
haven't been
anything.
invited.
Well, there haven't been
Yeah,
any
there hasn't been
meetings.
anything.
The project managers we've had
Hasn't
have
been
even
anything.
managed an email list. I've written back to one of them to say we've got this person wrong and this person wrong, this person's dead, and you know,
Well, they change on a fortnightly basis.
it's an absolutely basic level of knowledge and
Okay,
contact
right.
with
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
Right, okay, well, yes,
Include
yes, okay.
something about parish council
Right.
representation on
Okay.
their meetings, because as far as I'm aware, the project team has changed
Oh, no, mine
in
too.
terms of people,
Yeah.
and we ought to reinforce that message again, that as a
Yeah.
parish council, we're interested in what's going on with the community health, and we want to be represented at
Yes,
their
yeah,
meetings.
yeah. Right, so...
Right, I just need a vote.
Yes, okay, right.
Is that everyone? Yeah, thank
You're
you.
I'm staying.
You're
Yes,
staying.
yes, okay.
What was you?
Did you vote? Sorry, David.
Yeah, I voted,
You
yes,
voted,
yes,
yeah.
yeah, okay. So, state of the cemetery hedge, acreage view.
Right, this was deferred from December.
Yes,
We
indeed,
had a
yes.
quote to have the hedge at Huckridge View removed at a cost of £400. And then we discussed about replacing obviously the hedge. And then you asked me to find out if there was a different type of hedge that we could...
Something nicer
Something
than
nicer.
privet, I think it's agreed.
Yes is the answer. I tried to get hold of the trees officer at South Cambs on several occasions with no response, so I asked Scottsdales if they could recommend anything. They've recommended 3 different types of hedges. I can't pronounce any of them. One's pretty, got pretty pink flowers in spring and purple leaves. One's an evergreen with white flowers and berries. And one's a thorny evergreen with white flowers in spring and stunning berries in autumn.
Pyricanthia,
Viburnum tinus,
Yes.
Prunus systema,
Right.
cum laude.
What does Mike
So we
think?
need about 120.
Does Mike have
Sorry,
an idea?
do you
I
have...
was just going to say we need 100.
I'm not saying anything.
But do
Yeah,
you
but you've had a view on it. You should speak.
Yeah, but I've got
Because
to
you've
clear
got a
off
view on
that
it,
to have
haven't
the hedge removed. That has now been withdrawn because that was a
Oh, it
favour,
has.
as a favour to me at the time. We've got a
Right,
new hedge down by the pavilion, which more or less is a cemetery hedge. You cannot put that type of hedge on a boundary because of the poisonous aspects
Okay.
of the trees. We then carried on with the conifer hedge when the cemetery was first established. No, it's wrong. we started with a hawthorn hedge. That was not deemed suitable, so put a conifer hedge in. I think that's lasted, how long's the cemetery been, new cemetery been there?
15 years.
Is it 15, 16 years?
15, 16 years, something like that.
That's now disappeared because it nearly all died off. The hawthorn hedge had had dog roses in, one thing and another, which I said at the time they would overrule the hawthorn, which they had done, and now we're going into different types of hedge. So we've got 3 parts of the way round the cemetery with the privet, which was the original hedge years ago, and that was very, very thick. And it was ruined by one of the ground staff at the time, and we've never had a hedge since. If privet's 3/4 of the way round, why change it?
I didn't know it was 3/4 of the way round. So that seems a good argument for making it privet then.
Okay.
Sorry, Joe.
Okay, so back to
I can see that we don't really want anything with thorns, does that?
Well, that's
mean
what I was
that
just
the
saying, we
hawthorn
don't-
is a bit
yeah.
harder to trim?
And
It's
also,
really spiky.
I think berries can be an issue for reasons to be mentioned.
Yeah, that's why
Yes,
I
yes,
asked about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
The annoying part to me is that
So,
I had it organised to have the hedge removed.
So is he withdrawing that?
He said he would not do it at that price.
Right, okay, so basically we've got one cost then to remove the privet hedge at £1,280. That's to remove it, and
It's
then to replace...
no, it's removing the hawthorn and dogwood.
Oh, that's to remove, sorry, to
So
remove it.
I don't think we've made any comment about removing it. We were just commenting on what we were going to replace it with.
Yeah, but you're not going to replace it until,
No,
unless you've
maybe,
removed
yeah,
it.
yeah.
You've got to remove the whole hedge to
One
replace
is
it.
contingent.
It's replacing the whole hedge, removing it
Yes,
all,
yes,
and
yeah.
because it had the dog.
I mean, to be quite honest, there's no use just pulling the hedge out because you're going to leave the dog rose behind.
You've got to take the roots out.
Yeah. Right. So do we have a proposal then to remove the hedge and replace it with privet?
But so you, right, hold on, so you're proposing that we remove it at a cost of 1280?
Yes.
Rather than the 400 or 500.
Well, because that's, he's withdrawn that.
He's withdrawn that.
So it's cost us a lot more money now, isn't it?
Well,
So back to the original idea.
So if one of 2 offers have been withdrawn, we ought to go out and get...
well, I can try, but like I'd struggle to get these 2.
Sure.
Again, it's always getting 3 quotes, but I mean, it's...
Well, I mean,
and then I'm happy
we
to do
count
that.
the motion as having that as a top figure, and if rather than bringing it back again, because this has been sort of kicking around.
That's
So
your top.
yes,
the
yeah.
baseline.
And I'll try and get another...
Yes.
Right, proposed, right, so remove the hedge at a cost of up to that, and then I'll try and get another quote. And then to replace it with privet hedge.
Yes.
And to replace with privet.
So I mean, we need to move this on to go towards the end of the planting season.
Well,
don't we?
yeah.
Yes.
I think the privet hedge would be about £500.
Okay.
Well, the thing is, I feel that the cemetery committee all work together. We come up with constructive ideas instead of criticising what's going on, and that's quite annoying.
Right. Well, we have a clear proposal now to replace the existing hedge and
I'm
replace
sure we
it.
had members of the cemetery committee at that meeting and nobody actually
Tiny
mentioned it.
So I have a proposal and a
Unfortunately,
second from Janet. All those in favour of that proposal, please indicate
Nobody
now.
mentioned that when
Are
we
you
were discussing and it
I'm
would have
voting for
made a
it.
difference.
Are you voting
Mr.
for
Chairman
it?
didn't.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
So
that's unanimous.
that's unanimous. Right, reserve accounts as signatories, which I think
Which we've discussed.
which we
We've
have.
already
Yeah.
done, so...
Yes, do we want to name the signatories?
Well, no, it's all as our
It is.
financial regulations.
Yes, it is, yes, okay. So the 182, which is the recent breaking of the ground store, which was on Tuesday the 2nd of January.
Well, yeah, it's just an update to say we've had to replace the tools that were stolen at a cost of just over £2,000. It's been reported to the police, they're still looking into it. We've had to replace the alarm as well, so I'm sending stuff to the insurance, but we're just waiting for the, obviously, Agritech, because they smashed all the alarms, so we had to get a call out for that, so we had to wait for them to come out, and they've replaced it all, so we're just waiting for more invoices to come through before we can claim back. Yes, so we are looking at, we was trying to discuss whether, right, so the door on the ground store needs to be replaced, because at the moment it's just it's like a wooden door with a metal sheet on it, so it was quite easy to get into once they'd gone through 2 lock gates. So to replace the actual door, we contacted about 4 different door companies and garage door people, and they've all told us to go to a steel fabricator to actually get a quote. So we had a local one come out. He recommended that we have a door which has got steel section posts in it, and a 15-point locking mechanism on it. But the door would be £1,065.
Does that include fitting?
Yes.
Isn't that going to make the door stronger than the surrounding building?
Well,
the building's steel frame, isn't it? So,
I mean, yes. Well,
it was a genuine question, not a rhetorical question.
Yes.
What's the state of the
but obviously
surrounding
that's the way they're
building?
getting in, is obviously through the door, through the metal shutters, but the metal shutters, obviously we set the alarm off again, but the metal shutters inside have got a lock on them as well. So they'd have to get in and then break that lock to be able to open the shutters, but to get in, it would be easier to go through the door. So that's a metal door. The other thing which we have spoken about before is to put solid steel panels like enclosures within the building. I know we spoke about it at Spices, because Alan was always concerned that at Spices during cricket season they leave the garage open so they can get their roller in and out, yet we've got machinery sitting there that could obviously be taken. So I did ask to get a quote on that as well.
It's also a safety thing, isn't it?
Well, it's safety, and it would help with our insurance as well. So at Spices to put fabricate a fitting of solid steel panels to form an enclosure within there would be £1,660 plus VAT, which would be to fit, and that's at Spices to block half of it off. And at Mill Lane, again, would be £2,437.
That's in the store.
That's in the ground store.
Yes, yeah.
So it's quite a lot of money, but it's whether you. They've got to get into the building and then get in. When they broke into the ground store, the police said, had we had an enclosure inside, because the alarm and that went off, by the time they wouldn't have been able to get into it as such.
But the other thing as well with that was the bit of luck we had on the Mill Lane one was the fact that they disturbed the neighbour and he stood up to them and told them to get on their bike. Now the thing is when you take in consideration they were there by the time I got there and they left was 3 minutes. So in 3 minutes they managed to steal 2,000 quid's worth of stuff. What could they have done if they had 10 minutes? And that's the thing that I'm looking at. And the other thing as well is, one of the things that we looked at is obviously the brand new tractors in there, and I'm sure they would have twigged that. So we put a
tracker that's been fitted now.
We put a tracker in the mobilised wrong, so we applied that immediately.
So as much as, in my opinion, as much as yes, it is a huge expense, but I think for our own security and peace of mind,
I mean, to have all this, that would be just over £5,162 to have the new door fitted in the cages and then the cage in the store, as well as, because Spices, it's a garage, but it's on a sports ground, obviously hasn't got a car parked in it, so that's my concern, is that the next target as such?
And I think we need to look at that.
Can I ask, this might seem a silly question, but can we not consolidate the two stores, the store and the equipment?
I think so.
This is in the ground store.
But you talked about one at Mill Lane, one at Spices. Have we got to keep?
Oh God, there's because at Spices there's the roller and then there's the mowers and that for the cemetery, and in the ground store is obviously, and they park the van and that, and you can't that
There's not enough
there's not enough room
enough
to put everything in the
space,
ground store.
and doesn't each
And
of
it's
those
where-
have stuff
yeah, it's
for
where they are.
location.
It's
It's
quite
where
tight
they-
in the ground store actually. We've been doing.
It's where they're based. They don't want to
Yeah.
have to keep going to the ground store every time to get a lawnmower out when they're going to cut the.
So just ask the question.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no, they're-
it would otherwise be a way of
Right.
saving money maybe
Yeah.
and reducing the risk.
Yeah, there was one thing I was going to ask as to whether the equipment was marked in any way.
Yeah, we've got smart,
It is, yeah,
smart
it's
water.
also- yeah.
So we've done that already.
Yeah, so it's all done that. The police, we've given them all the serial numbers, run them back today, so they've got all the serial numbers in case they find anything.
Okay.
And any new equipment we get, we have to write down obviously all the serial numbers and everything.
Should we be looking beyond the police and advertising on social media that this stuff is stolen and we know the serial numbers? I mean, the general experience seems to be that the police aren't very good at investigating burglaries or ever getting any stuff back, but you might stand more chance.
That's what I told the police, that
Well,
they need to go
yeah,
to
because one of the
They need to be able to
what-
cover, go to a
one of the
public
comments that was
site,
made
get
by someone was if you actually went down to this market the next day, you'd have probably seen all the stuff there.
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to open it up onto social media for the purposes it makes it look
It
as
tells
if
people.
it's
It tells
entirely-
people
Does,
that,
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
because when we had the mortuary shed broken into and they took all the mowers, obviously I knew we were going to replace them and it was only a matter of weeks later
3
they
weeks
broke
later
into
they
it
were,
again.
yes,
And
yeah,
we didn't
yeah.
have them in there purposely, but yeah, because concern is that they'll obviously
So
come
yeah,
back.
we want to look out for
I mean, we've replaced the locks and the gates and stuff, but
Right. So.
But sorry, without prolonging it, I was just going to say one other thing. It would be worth though raising this when we have our next meetings with the police. I mean, one of the things I noticed, which is quite obvious, is that all over Christmas and New Year, the e-cops alert said no crimes reported, no crimes reported. As soon as we get to 2nd of January,
yeah.
everyone's back from their holidays and they burgle our properties, they burgle down in Great Shelford,
Eccleston not hit.
Eccleston, you know, that's the thing that people need to be
Yeah.
alerted to. That the fact that, you know, we all worry about
Yeah.
public holidays and being out and being away from our homes, whereas actually that's not the time, you know, because
It's always touching, isn't it?
It's-
They'll take a week off. for
yeah,
Christmas
week
as
off
well.
to be with their families, you know, or is that what it is? I don't know. But I mean, it's if there is a pattern in the timings, then
yeah.
that's perhaps the sort of thing people
Well,
want to know about.
just to bring us back to the subject in hand,
Yeah.
we've had quotations for the 3 pieces of work which we feel need to be done, which we need to approve at this meeting.
Well,
We're going
if
to do
you
that.
want to do them, yeah.
So,
And again, I'm sorry to ask, but we haven't had competitive quotes for this stuff, have we? We've got one.
Well,
one price.
like I say, we've contacted I think it was 4 different door people, and they've all said to us,
These
well,
are
what we
very
want, we need to go to a steel
Yes.
fabricator, which is,
you know,
I mean, if you know
They've
any others.
actually been led by other advice.
yes.
No, that's not. Sorry, I'm not saying.
No,
I mean, I'm not happy to try and get other quotes, but if you've got steel fabricators that you know of in and around, I can ask them, but I'll just ask them. I always go for a local one.
Is this what Mackay's Metal Warehouse would do? Or
Mackay's.
mention?
Maybe, I don't know, it's up to you, tell me what you want me to do.
I would like
And
this
for
to
this
try.
amount of money,
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
just that we really should be.
Right.
I mean, I appreciate what's being said, but my
Or
concern
obliged
about this
to
is
it.
it's
Broke
not
into
secure,
again.
it's going to get bumped
Yeah.
into again and we're going to lose even more
I think
stuff.
timing is of the essence.
And
Because
I really do like
I was going to say, we haven't done a risk assessment here.
Yeah, that's a point. Fair play, Mike.
Let's straight into risk mitigation to try and resolve or improve our chances of stopping burglary being successful, which is fine. But if you know, we've gone for months since. How long have we had the new tractor?
3 weeks
3
before
weeks.
Christmas.
3 weeks. I've got brand new equipment in there for chainsaws and so on. So, is there a way that we could, if timing is as critical as we suggest, is
Well,
there
the
a
police
way
think they'll
we
be
can
bad, I mean,
mitigate
you can't
being?
tell, can you?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. This is being discussed in a public meeting. It's being recorded on video. So it's out in the public domain. So if we now send a message that we aren't going to do anything about this for another month.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
been a better discussion to have in camera then. We had plenty of other discussions in camera.
No.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Why wasn't this one?
Because it doesn't
Well,
fall
because
because
it
it doesn't fall
doesn't-
within
say it's not-
within the requirements of the
yeah.
Act. I'm afraid.
Really?
Mr. Chairman, there's only one way. Richard January said donkeys years ago, a lot only keeps your friends out.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's about
Right, what would you like me to do? Because
So how about the compromise? We vote for the maximum up to this amount. We ask you to contract the guys and see whether it's at all feasible that they can quote quickly. If they can't, which you'd be able to ascertain fairly quickly, then you'd be in a position to go ahead.
Did you try Crofton Engineering?
no.
Linton.
Who?
Crofton.
Right, so that's
They're on the
too
right
much.
hand
That's
side
fine.
opposite the
It's
village
just
college.
it's still got to get announced.
Right, so I'm conscious of time.
Yeah.
And we,
Right, sorry, Kieran, you're
So I
proposing that
propose
to,
up to
that, but get two others.
So,
Yeah. And shall we all email Joe if we've got
Yeah.
suggestions?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
So all those in favour of that proposal, please indicate now.
Yeah.
Right, there's unanimous, thank you.
Could we just say a public thank you as well to the chap
Oh,
who
indeed,
did?
yes, yeah.
Just,
we do,
and to everybody
We
who's
have
taken
actually, yes, yeah.
swift and effective action.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
Particularly.
yeah. Right, so neighbourhood plan,
Yes,
very briefly.
very
Chair.
briefly. Brian, I think, has emailed round to everyone the links to the G Drive website, where if you have a look at that, you'll find the draft minutes of the last meeting and also a locality template for a project plan, and also my summary of what was discussed at the meeting in terms of an action plan and engagement plan. This will be discussed at the next Planning Environment meeting, 23rd of January. Everyone is invited to that. If you can't come, can you please have a look at this and let us have comments, particularly on time frames? Yeah? Because we need to get this outlined so we can actually start on the action that's required.
Do you know which was the link?
It's been sent to everyone, I believe. It's a G
Yeah.
Drive link.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Send
can.
it to you.
We can send it again.
Yeah, yeah,
probably.
I've got a computer, it's difficult to access the Google Drive.
But thank you, Brian, for setting that up.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you, Brian, for setting that
yes,
up.
Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you. Would it be helpful having a source pack loaded onto that? I mean, it's available for South Kent.
Yeah, that would
But I
be
mean, I can
useful.
do that if
Anything
you
that's
want
not
to,
already on
okay,
there. Yeah,
okay.
resource pack.
I don't want to
Yes.
overload it, but